Hello world. About a year ago I put up a funny story. Wasn't really funny. I put up a story from Fab 208, which was a pop annual from the 1970s and early 80s, linked to Radio Luxembourg. If you want to hear the story, you haven't heard it yet, I will put a card, there's a work, up there somewhere in the top right hand corner. Now, I've actually found that Fab 208 annuals are, God, they'll never sell ice cream going that quickly. Fab 208 annuals are 2 a penny on eBay. This one 99p. So this is from 1975. So it will be about the music scene in 1974. Very little actually comes from the stars themselves. It's all somebody telling you about them, and it's all like, oh, if Les from the Bay City Rollers was a Virgo, then his stars would say about him. And they get all sorts of drawing experts and handwriting experts in to analyze their writing and their drawing and stuff like that, but very, very little about them. I think their big scoop, I think, was an article in here about the Osmonds here. So the point of this video then is to have a little go at making some of the recipes. This was a comic that was clearly aimed at girls, and therefore it contains all of the things that in the 1970s that were expected of women. Right, I'm gonna come back to this. Someone ought to be doing sociology essays about these things, because it's really interesting to hear that only 50 years ago, I mean, I'm more than 50, so only 50 years ago some of these attitudes were very, very set in stone. You put it this way, you wouldn't get a boys annual telling you how to cook. Okay, so tasty teaser. We've been busy putting together a selection of all your favourite dishes of the two-legged variety for this yearbook. But when they choose their favourite dishes, the edible sort, what do they like? We've included some of these recipes, and just for fun, try guessing who eats what before you turn to page 75 to find out. Look at the 6 people picture below, then run through the dishes over leaf and decide which is the favourite of each star. Then fill in your suggestions in the space provided above each pick. Alright, so Andy Scott of Sweet likes, Gary Glitter likes. Unfortunately, Gary Glitter is featured quite heavily in this book. Nobody knew what he was like at the time. We're just going to leave it there. I never liked him anyway. Never, even as a tiny tot. There was absolutely nothing about him or his image that I found attractive. Unfortunately, the recipe that I'm going to cook today from this book is the one that he likes, but other than that, I really don't care. All right. Ray Stiles of Mud likes. Paul Layton likes. I don't know who Paul Layton is. Les Gray of Mud likes, and Eve Graham likes, and I don't know who Eve Graham is either. But I obviously know the Sweet, obviously know Mud. And you have some recipes here. Beef curry. Given that in the 90s, even as far back as the 90s, I once heard, and it would have been the late 90s because I know where I was living at the time, I was in Asda and I heard these 2 women, and one said, oh, she likes all that foreign muck, pasta. So, yes, the British are sort of very famous for their very conservative and taste in food, and probably I'm exactly the same, and lack of willingness to try anything else. So this beef curry here is not really a beef curry that if I were following a recipe today that I would know. It reminds me a bit of a recipe that Mrs. Crocombe made in the Victorian way. If you watch that on YouTube, that's always good. Only Mrs. Crocombe's had cucumber in it, this doesn't. Okay, you've got a choice of Sweet Louise, which is like chocolate pancakes, shepherd's pie, beef casserole, roast lamb and moussaka. And I really, really doubt that many people in Britain were really that into trying things like moussaka or even the curry. I mean, the curry had sort of, after Windrush and everything, we were getting a very kind of more multicultural society, but I don't think that this would really sort of cut the mustard as far as they're concerned. That there are curry collections that I have actually seen in libraries and borrowed from libraries that have got, from the 1940s and 50s, that have actually got better recipes in it than this. So this is really, it's a curry, but it's not, all right? So I'm going to have a go at it anyway. I think there were, the Mary Berries on telly were trying to encourage us all to buy freezers and get a little bit more adventurous with our cooking, and I suppose this is it. But roast lamb, beef casserole, shepherd's pie, there you go. That's your typical British stodge, as it were. Anyway, let's have a go. I've got my onions cooking now. I can hear them doing something. All right, so I'm going to go into the kitchen. I have to apologise again for my kitchen. The word functional barely covers it. I can stand in it and it's got a cooker in it. Okay, so here are my onions cooking. Now this is not a how to make curry video. This is just me following a recipe from a teenage annual from 1974 just to see what it's like. And to prove that I'm not an expert in cooking, that red thing here, it's very hot actually at the moment, did have onions cooking. You might have heard them sizzling away while I was making that little bit of video, but I burnt them to a shred. So I'm now cooking them in this, which I suppose is a bit like a wok. You just use a sort of fairly large pan, whatever it is that you've got that you can cook in. It's cooking in cooking oil. This might be a good chance to just go and run through the ingredients. I don't think, burning onions aside, I don't think people really cook onions long enough in recipes. They just sort of throw them in and then just, they really need to have softened. So while they're softening, let's have a little look at what's in this beef curry. You will need a pound of stewing steak. Well, actually, again, little disclaimer, I'm not using stewing steak because the only steak that I've got says slow cooks in 4 to 5 hours, and for a curry you don't want it slow cooking for 4 to 5 hours. So I've got chicken instead, and I've got just 2 chicken breasts, which is just over the pound. Yeah, this is a pound of stewing steak. A medium onion chopped, that's what's in there. A medium cooking apple, peeled and cut into pieces. Well, I've got 2. I did put some lemon in them, but they do seem to be browning a little bit, which, it's all going to go down the same way. It's all going to soften. It'll be fine, I'm sure. An ounce of margarine, that's for frying in. Do you remember margarine, people? Nowadays, I suppose the equivalent would be the sort of I can't believe it's knots and utterly buttleys. But back in the day, margarine was a really gruesome thing that was supposedly a healthier alternative to butter. Well, actually, I think that butter is far healthier than margarine. And margarine tasted disgusting as well. All right, 2 large tomatoes or a medium tin of tomatoes. I have a medium tin of tomatoes floating around somewhere. A heaped tablespoon of flour, 2 ounces of sultanas. I resent sultanas because I always go out and buy them and end up with bags of them going around doing nothing and buy them for one recipe. But I have actually got some sultanas here by Sainsbury's and not pleased very much with how much I paid for them. Half a pint of beef stock, or you may use a stock cube. I'll be using a chicken stock cube. 1 to 2 heaped teaspoons of curry powder, depending on how hot you like your curry. That's the only concession to Indian spices. This is what I'm saying. This is when Mrs. Crocombe made a very similar curry for her video for the English Heritage. She said, "Oh, Queen Victoria likes it," but Queen Victoria never set foot beyond anywhere that was further away than the Isle of Man. So she would have no idea how a proper curry is cooked. So yeah, this is really the most basic of curries here. Half a teaspoon of sugar and is that a quarter of a teaspoon of salt? Yeah, it's a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. How to make: fry the chopped onion in the margarine and add the steak chopped into cubes. I think we could probably add the chicken now. I think that's been going long enough. And these onions are sort of going nice and golden and crisping up, but they're not the awful black state that they were in. They were absolutely cremated, the other ones were. So that's the chicken been frying there for about 7 or 8 minutes. And now we're going to add these apples. And cook till soft. Okay. So we shall come back when those are soft. By the way, when I was shopping for apples, the recipe states cooking apples, and I did actually eventually find some Bramley apples, which I'm reliably informed by the sticker on them. It says the cooking apple, so that's what I've used. I've used 2 of them. One of them was quite badly bruised, so I used that up. So I suppose it's about 1.5 cooking apples in here. I think you could probably get away with using any apple, peel it, chop it. You might need 2 of them if they're the usual kind of eating apple size ones. The witch's brew is nearly ready. In goes eye of puppy, other eye of puppy, rest of puppy. But being as how the only concession to Indian spices that we've got here are the curry powder, I've added 2 teaspoons. It's medium curry powder as well, so it's not too palate removing the top off. And considering as well that there's no kind of coconut or cream or any kind of softener to the spice, I thought it best to sort of stick with a sort of medium or a sort of mildish to medium curry powder. Rather than going too hot. And of course, if you're not making Fab 208's curry, you're going to use a spice mix, or like a proper paste that you can buy from the supermarkets, or you're going to use proper spices and make it properly, roast them and all that kind of thing and make it properly. But this is British easy in the 70s. Now, I think I need to add the tomatoes now. Just check and bear with. Followed by the tomatoes. 450 gram or pound of tomatoes there. They said use 2 large tomatoes or a medium can. I'm sure this counts as a medium can. I resent having to throw that bit of tomato away, so I'm going to swill it round. And then I'm just going to just top that up with a little more water there, and should be about 300 ml. They say use half a pint, which is 285 ml, 300 ml. Come on, that's not faff. All right, and some chicken stock here, and then that is just going to hubble bubble, toil and trouble until it's ready, I think. And they say about 1 hour and 15 minutes. Well, as Julia Child would say, in about an hour, I should come back and make some rice. And then I'll tell you what this is like. And in the meantime, I think I'm going to make you another video about another article that's in this lovely Fab 208 book, because I just find nostalgia absolutely fascinating. And so I'd like to explore it with you a little more. Right, I've made some rice now. Now that's rice that I've made boiling a pan of water quite hard, bring it up to the boil before you add any rice to it. This is white basmati rice, but what I've done is also taken a couple of strands of saffron and dissolved them in some milk and then sort of cook that in with it, so that now that's more or less done. I do need to strain it, right? But what I'm going to do, and this is completely deviating from the Fab 208 recipe, is to make this into an oven baked biryani. But I will taste the sauce, because it's only the sauce that they told us how to make. So I'll taste that for you on YouTube. But as I say, this is going to be made into a biryani, and I'll come back and I'll show you how I'm doing it. So that's a little layer of rice. I cooked a cup of rice, I have to say. This is a cup measurement here, this sort of thing here. 250 ml or 1 cup basically. And now I'm going to spoon on the curry mixture, leaving some behind so that I can taste it with you guys. And then I'm going to put the rest of the rice on top of that, and then it's going in a very low oven, about gas mark 1, until I've finished editing this video, or whichever comes first really. Just about half an hour, something like that. Okay, just until I'm ready to eat it. Right, but really a very, very low oven. Okay, so after all that, here I am back. I just have just a wee plate here of just a couple of mouthfuls of the sauce, because as I say, the main rice dish is now just sitting in the oven, very, very low heat, until I'm ready to nosh up, as it were. Now, that is actually very sweet. There is a hint of heat there, but it's more sweet and sour. The chicken is lovely. It's nice. It just isn't what you would call curry. But as I say, I think I tried to sort of intimate earlier on in the video, you would use a curry paste now. Like Pataks, for example, do like a korma paste and a madras paste and this and that sort of, you know, sort of genuine, sort of proper flavoured pastes. Back in 1974, if you had a tub of curry powder in your larder, they were sort of feeling like they were sort of moving forward and being modernist and keeping with the times and stuff like that. Whereas, you know, this is really not a curry. I'm enjoying it. Actually, it's lovely. It's just not curry. Alright, sorry Fab 208, sorry 1974 and all that, but, you know, it is what it is. Now, yesterday, was it yesterday? Something like that, I put up a quiz for my 15th anniversary YouTube video. I really would appreciate some entries to that. Alright, see you later. Bye. Remember to like, subscribe, share if you dare, and if you want to, and if you possibly can, consider a thanks by clicking the heart under this video. Thank you very much. Bye.